Sex and the City hits way different when you realize it's not about dating. It's about adulthood. Hi, my name is Tatiana Arrington. I'm an entertainment journalist, film critic, and Sex and the City enthusiast. Today, I want to touch on Sex and the City, and I want to talk about how specifically this show was about navigating adulthood. Every episode introduced for the women a new romance, a new problem, a new man, something that was involved in the world of dating. But as you go on to watch it, you realize that the stakes are just not about love. Through each of the women, we see how they navigate adulthood, and you see through their lens, they essentially choose what type of adult they want to be. So I want to start off with Carrie because I feel like Carrie is the one that struggles the most with adulthood, right? Her finances are a mess. She never commits to anything. She has no discipline. Chaos in her relationships feels normal to her, and she thrives off of that chaos. But like I talked about in my last video with Carrie specifically, she's consistently like chasing romance, right? Throughout the series, you see her talk about how she's wanting or looking for that big love. And as long as she's looking for and chasing that, she doesn't have to commit to herself. She doesn't have to commit to adulthood. So I wouldn't go as far as to say like Carrie is immature. Now, don't get me wrong, she definitely has immature moments, but I think this is more about a fear of stillness for Carrie. In adulthood, we see themes of stillness that are very necessary, and Carrie almost always ran from those. Case in point, Aiden, right? And stillness, I would argue, would force Carrie to ask, who is she and what does she want in her adult life? But she doesn't choose that. So we see the men throughout Carrie's adulthood become these emotional placeholders for her, to the point where it's like, okay, as long as I'm dealing with this, I don't have to choose myself. So what we see throughout Carrie's adulthood is that the men become emotional placeholders for her, and they sort of delay that moment of adulthood. They keep her life active, right? They keep that motion for her going, but because of that, she doesn't have to sit in that stillness and choose herself. Okay, so let's talk about Charlotte York and her relationship to adulthood. Charlotte is actually, as we know, very different than Carrie, right? So she gets a rap, right, for being very naive and delusional, as we like to say, but she's not naive at all to me. Charlotte is the most intentional about the adult life, about adulthood, and what she wants. She has very clear goals for herself. Charlotte wants marriage and she wants kids. And these weren't just fantasies for Charlotte, right? They were goals. They were markers in adulthood that we see every single day. You see the person that's getting married. You see the person that's having kids. So whereas Carrie is running from adulthood, Charlotte is almost urgently running full speed towards adulthood. And that's why I think she sometimes feels out of sync with her BFFs, Carrie, Miranda, and Samantha, because she is actively pursuing adulthood while the rest of them aren't. Okay, so let's take it to Miranda Hobbs. Now, when the show starts, Miranda is an adult. Let's be clear. She's got her own bills. She's got a fabulous job. She's, leveling up apartments throughout the series. She is making her own money. She's incredibly successful. So her relationship to adulthood is very different than Carrie and Charlotte. She resents it. And this is why we see Miranda struggle a little bit more with dating throughout the show, is because she is such an adult. It frustrates her because it threatens everything that she has built so successfully for herself. We see that with her relationship with Steve, very much so. And, with a few other of the men that she dates, whether she doesn't have time or she has to work on a brief when she gets home. And then when she ends up having Brady, like all of these different things. And we see Miranda's resentment for adulthood as she deems it unfair. And just unfair. She also understands how demanding adulthood is, right? And I think that's why Miranda comes across as like the harsh one, or the one that, was a real pistol, as Steve said. But I mean, Miranda, I would argue, was the only one living in the real world, living in that real adulthood, where she was like, hey, listen, I can't talk to you about your boy problems on the phone right now, Carrie. I have to go to work. And then we can take it to Samantha Jones. So we see Samantha redefine adulthood for herself, and we see her reject the norms of adulthood time and time again. Samantha does not want marriage. She does not want kids. She doesn't care about any of those timelines but her own timeline. And I think that's what makes Samantha's relationship to adulthood so different from the other three women, is because the other three women are kind of negotiating adulthood, and Samantha has already refined and defined what it's going to mean for her, and she's not essentially playing the game that other women are trying to play. And I think that's why when you watch the show through a 90s lens, some of her choices seem very radical or out there, but it's just the simple fact that she is going in the opposite direction of what adulthood means to her. And I think that's why when you watch Sex and the City when you're younger, it feels so aspirational. You're like, oh my God, like they're living in the big city. Carrie's got Manolos. Rent, what's that? I can live on Park Avenue. Like it's just so fun and glamorous and exciting. And then the older you get, and y'all can correct me if I'm wrong, maybe everybody doesn't feel this way, but then you get anxious, right? And I think that's coming from, oh, in these women, you see the type of adult that they are, and that's reflected in their life choices and their actions. And I think that's why when you watch the end of the series, that ending matters so much, because it's not about what man each of the women ended up with. It's about what life were they willing to accept at the end. So Sex and the City wasn't a dating show that had little life moments in it. It was a life show that was disguised as a dating show. That's why the show, I think, ages with you. You can watch it anytime. That's why the show still sparks debate about this versus that. And that's why it also never really feels finished, and they were able to come back however many years later and do a reboot of the show. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you love this video, please make sure that you subscribe. Please feel free to like and comment. Let me know what you thought. I love to have a debate in the comments about these things. If you would like to see more videos, I do celebrity interviews, more pop culture breakdowns as mentioned. Please subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.